Once upon a time there was a young high school student named Bob. Bob decided that he was going to secure his future prosperity by going to college after graduating high school. He was not the brightest student in the world, so he selected an easy major so he would have plenty of time to enjoy the full college experience. So Bob spent the next 5.5 years getting his 4-year degree. Though it took him a longer than usual time to get his degree, he was nonetheless proud of his accomplishment. The same day that he received his degree, he got a statement showing how much he now owed in student loans. This didn't worry Bob at all because he knew, being a college graduate, that he was going to get a great job with very high pay. The very day he graduated college, Bob had his resume printed and started the job hunting process. Bob had dozens of interviews with prospective employers, but it seemed nobody needed a person with a bachelor's degree in underwater basket weaving. Bob soon realized that he may have chosen the wrong major in college. In desperate need of money to pay his debts, he ended up taking a job that didn't even require a college degree. Bob's new boss had several subordinates that were also failed college graduates, and he took great pleasure in reminding them that he was their boss and that he was a high school dropout. But there was a silver lining. One of Bob's co-workers was an attractive young lady that also went into debt to get her college degree, only to end up working the same dead-end job he was in. They were obvious soulmates and soon got married. Shortly after their expensive destination wedding, that their parents paid for, they decided to move out of their parents' basement and buy a house. To prove to everyone that they were not a couple of losers, they had their parents co-sign for their new home. And they bought the biggest and fanciest house they could find after convincing their parents that they should cash in their retirement nest egg and give them the money for the down payment. Shortly after buying the house, they received a credit card in the mail that they promptly used to furnish the whole house. They still needed one more thing to make sure everybody knew they were a success. So they got their parents to co-sign a loan and bought an expensive gas-guzzling Cadillac Escalade to commute back and forth to work and to park in the driveway for all to see. Now Bob felt like he really showed his boss up. Bob knew his boss was a penny pincher that lived frugally in order to save for the future instead of living for today. Bob and his new bride, on the other hand, lived la vida loca. And their house is bigger than their boss's house, and their car is more expensive than his, and they go out on the town more often than their boss and his wife do. Bob actually convinced himself that he really was smart and living a better life than his high school dropout boss. Just when things were going so well, Bob's wife announces that she is pregnant. And she goes on to inform Bob that she has decided that she will become a full-time stay-at-home mom. This sends shivers up Bob's spine. How on earth will he be able to continue this lifestyle and provide for a wife and child on just one income? But just when things look hopeless, Bob's boss announces that he got a business loan and bought the company. And in order to keep Bob around so he can continue to harass him, he has decided to give Bob a promotion and a raise. Now, instead of being a lowly hourly worker, Bob will be a salaried employee and a supervisor overseeing a large group of disgruntled hourly union workers. Because Bob's not the brightest bulb on the tree, it takes him several months to realize he just got screwed big time. As a salaried worker, he no longer gets overtime pay. And as a supervisor, he is required to work a lot of overtime. It only now dawns on Bob that when he divides his salary by the number of hours he now works, he's actually earning less per hour than he did when he was an hourly worker. So the hourly union workers that report to Bob bring home more pay than he does. That high school dropout boss of his just showed Bob once again how dumb Bob really is. Now Bob is totally depressed. Because Bob is depressed, he and his wife begin to argue a lot. So, to avoid arguing with his wife, Bob starts staying out at night, where he eventually meets an attractive young lady. It's not long before the two start having an affair. Bob's wife finds out about the affair and sues Bob for divorce. Because Bob cheated on his wife, and she now has a small child to provide for, the court awards her the house, the car, the furniture, alimony, and child support. And Bob is ordered to pay all the debts incurred during their marriage. Finally, Bob has had enough. He decides he is going to quit his job. grow a beard, assume a false identity, and run off to Alaska to live alone in the backwoods where the law can't find him and punish him for not paying his court-ordered debts. When Bob gets to Alaska, he discovers there are hundreds of other bearded men hiding out in the backwoods for the same reason he is. Meanwhile, since Bob stopped paying alimony and child support, his ex-wife was forced to sell the house, the furniture, and the Escalade and go on welfare. She is naturally bitter and is raising Bob's son to hate his guts. Bob's son, having grown up without a father and financially deprived, hopes to meet Bob someday so he can tell him how much he hates him. It is only now that Bob reflects on his life and realizes just how many mistakes he had made along the way that brought him to this terrible state of affairs. The moral of this story is: try to learn from other people's mistakes so you can avoid them and live a happy and rewarding life.